ladies and gentlemen, to the She Knows Pro Football podcast. Once again, I'm Alice, aka the NFL Girl. And once again, I have my good friend Dominick from Fantasy Hot Read with me. Dominick, how you doing?
Doing pretty good. You had a pretty good Christmas, had a nice holiday yesterday, so hopefully you're doing well as well, and you had a good holiday and a good Christmas yourself.
Christmas was good. We have started a new year, a new decade. I'm all set to begin this new journey, and I'm all set to see how this daggone NFL season is going to wrap up, because this might be an interesting Super Bowl we have coming.
Yeah, who knows what's going to happen? It could be Baltimore against San Francisco, round 2 or round 3 if you want to consider their last Super Bowl when they were in New Orleans and the power got shut off.
I was at that Super Bowl, and yes, we were really sitting in the dark, people. Anyway, you guys, we got Wild Card Weekend coming up. The season is finally over. We're headed into the playoffs. Teams that we thought weren't going to do well did exactly that. Teams that we thought were going to make the playoffs, most of them did that, which was awesome and good to see. And some of them surprised us how they ended their season. But hey, we'll see how this all works out. I'm still curious as to who's going to end up in the Super Bowl in the end. So let's get started with our Saturday matchup first, which is on the AFC side. The early matchup is going to be the 10-6 Buffalo Bills headed to Houston to face the 10-6 Houston Texans. Dominick, who you got?
Yeah, I really like Houston. Deshaun Watson is one of the better quarterbacks in the league. I'm not going to put him in top 5 yet, but he's very close. His issue is, I know everybody talks about it with Jameis Winston throwing a lot of interceptions, but if you look at it, Watson throws quite a few picks himself, and his offensive line is not the best, so he's still getting sacked at a historic rate this season. Buffalo has been very good on defense, especially their pass defense, which is number 4 in the league. Obviously, their run defense is not as good, but it's still a very good run defense. This should be a lower scoring game. We'll have to see if they're able to keep DeAndre Hopkins in check. I don't think they're going to obviously be able to stop him, although he hasn't had a great season like everybody thought he would, but he has still had a very good season, and he is still one of the best receivers in the league. I just think for some reason that this Buffalo team is extremely scrappy. The fact that Josh Allen is able to run very well, maybe even better than, Deshaun Watson, and obviously Deshaun Watson has a better arm, at least accuracy-wise, than Josh Allen does, isn't going to be as big a deal in this game because Houston's defense is not as good, and I just feel that Buffalo is going to be able to go down to Houston in this game, and I think that they're going to pull the upset here, and I think they're the better team, and they're going to beat Houston in RNG Stadium.
So I love Deshaun Watson, and I was impressed with this team was able to do, because there was a period in the middle where it didn't look like they were going to make the playoffs at all. They were having a little bit of issues. Mainly their biggest issues is on that offensive line and the fact that they are not able to protect Deshaun Watson, and he has had to scramble for his life. Thank goodness he has good receivers in Will Fuller, in Nuke, and as well as the addition of Kenny Stills. It's good that they have a good run game. I've liked seeing what Duke Johnson and Carlos Hyde have been able to do there. The problem with the Texans isn't just their offensive line, which has been such a major issue in particular for Deshaun. It's also the fact that their defense, after J.J. Watt went down, was not able to step up at the same level that it was previously. I feel like had Watt stayed healthy, they would have been able to maybe put together like a 13-3 season, because they weren't getting blown out in every game. They had a couple of games where it could have gone a different way, where they only lost by one score. And so I see that they could have probably had a season go a little bit better than what it did, but they did well, and they did finish atop that division. The Bills, meanwhile, finishing in second place in that division, what can you say about them that hasn't already been said other than the fact that defense is amazing, that Josh Allen, we kind of expected a sophomore slump, but that he actually did pretty well this season, and I want to give some credit to the fact that he really found a connection with John Brown this year, which has been great for him, and I like seeing that. Like seeing how they were able to build upon that. Love the running game that they have there. Bill's biggest thing is going to be that defense, and the fact that Houston has such a terrible O-line. They're going to be able to expose that. They're going to have Deshaun Watson out of the pocket scrambling for his life like he typically has to do. I do expect him to still be able to, get the ball to DeAndre Hopkins, but I do expect that they're going to be able to get several sacks on him, unfortunately. They may even pick him off a time or two. I'm going to give this one to the Bills as well. I just feel like the Bills' defense is what's going to be the difference in that matchup. And I feel like because they have such a higher rated defense that has performed better this season, I just feel like the Bills are just going to be able to pull it out of there. And again, it might be a slugfest and it might be low scoring. The Bills definitely are going to get that one. Next up, we got the 9-7 Tennessee Titans headed to New England to face the 12-4 Patriots. Dominick, who you got?
Yeah, this one's tough because I do think that even though Tennessee finished 9-7 for the fourth year in a row, which is the first time it's ever happened in NFL history, and I know that the Patriots are 12-4, I do think that the Titans might actually be the better team here. We know they're better on offense, which is sad to say because nobody expected to say that before the season started. But there's something magical about the Patriots in the playoffs. They just, for some reason, they don't lose. Although it's usually every other year they've gone to the Super Bowl. They won it obviously last year in 18, then they won it in 16, they won it 14. So in between years they're not as good. The last time they didn't have a first round bye was 2009, and they didn't make the Super Bowl that year either. The only thing I'm worried about with the Tennessee Titans is that Derrick Henry had 32 rushes last week for 211 yards and 3 touchdowns. Having 30 rushes last week and then going up against this very tough Patriots defense this week is going to be extremely difficult on him. A.J. Brown is a tank. He's averaged over 20 yards per catch the entire year, which is amazing for anybody, let alone a rookie. Stephon Gilmore, who could be the defensive player of the year, had a very bad game last week against Devontae Parker. Devontae Parker just showed him up. And if that goes again this week, I think Tannehill with Derrick Henry and A.J. Brown have enough to beat this Patriots team. The Patriots offense is terrible. Their defense is not playing nearly as good, and they haven't played nearly as good against good teams. So as much as it's shocking for me to say this, I think I'm going to have to take the Tennessee Titans to go into Foxborough and actually beat the Patriots.
I am not surprised actually to hear you say that because I've actually been listening to a lot of analysts give some of the exact reasons that you're naming. The New England Patriots this season on offense have not been the Patriots of previous season. Is it because he doesn't have the best receivers? I mean, you got to keep in mind, they let Antonio Brown go. They let Josh Gordon go for obvious reasons on both of them, and they thought that he could make magic like he's done, in the history of, having great receivers or turn ordinary receivers into great receivers like he's done in history, like players like Deion Branch, and turn them into phenomenal receivers. But he wasn't able to do that this year with the receivers that he had. Edelman did fairly good for him, and that was fine, but that hasn't been enough. And Sony Michel didn't put up the numbers that people thought he would on that offense simply because we expected more out of that offense. It's Tom Brady, for goodness sake. Keep in mind, Tom Brady's 42, so he's going to, not play at the same level as like a 22, 23, 24-year-old quarterback. That's just got to be expected. So his defense was going to have to step up for him this season. And fortunately, they did just that. However, the last 3 weeks, they have not been playing at that same level that they were playing at in the early part of the season when they were just running through teams. Why? Because they were now starting to face better on the back half of the season. They started facing better quality opponents, and they weren't able to play at that same level that they played when they were playing the low level opponents that they played at the first part of the season. So that's where they started to get exposed, and people were able to exploit some of the weaknesses that they actually have on that defense. Tennessee Titans, meanwhile, the connection that Ryan Tannehill, first of all, bringing in Ryan Tannehill was a genius move for the Titans. They didn't know it. Coming out from the Dolphins, Tannehill looked like this was a disaster, and it was a stupid move on the Titans' part. And yet he's had a phenomenal season, and part of that has been his connection with A.J. Brown. No one expected this rookie to do what he's done, and yet his connection with Tannehill has been so good to see, and it's so good to see the Titans doing as well as they have, and in particular, it's good to see them finally make the playoffs. Derrick Henry, love this dude. Huge. It is hard to bring that dude down. This man is like 6'6", 250, 260. Big dude. Hard to bring down. Had a phenomenal game last week. But like you said, is he going to come in here fatigued this week after putting up such a huge game last week to get them into the playoffs? There's a possibility of that. And the biggest thing that the Patriots defense is going to know is whatever you do, go after Derrick Henry. That's going to be the big thing that they are going to focus on, is to keep Derrick Henry in the backfield. Don't let him get out in the open. Don't let him outrun you, outrace you. The man's going to drag, 2 or 3 players with him to the end zone if necessary, because that's just how big of a dude he is. I expect a really, really close matchup. I do not expect a blowout as far as the Patriots being able to blow out a low quality opponent. This is not the case. The Titans are a really good team, and their defense is not up to that same level, but their offense, I feel, is better than the Patriots. It's going to be close. It's going to be a tight one, but I got to give it to the Patriots. I do not expect them to make it to the Super Bowl. I'm just letting that be known right now, but I do expect them to get out of the wild card round and make it to the divisional playoffs, and then that'll be it for them. But they are going to beat the Titans, so I'm giving this one to the Patriots. Moving on to Sunday, we got the NFC side. The early matchup, we got the 10-6 Minnesota Vikings headed to New Orleans to face the 13-3 Saints. Dominick, who you got?
Yeah, you and I are both college football fans as well, and this game, whereas probably the AFC games I can see being like the Ohio State Clemson game, I think this game's going to be more like the LSU Oklahoma game. I think New Orleans is just going to smash Minnesota. Their pass defense in Minnesota is not good this year. Xavier Rhodes has basically disappeared for some reason. Their defense is not that good. Obviously, their run defense is pretty good, but so is the Saints' run defense. I can see this being a track meet for the Saints. I can see them going at least 40 points in here. They could get to 50 if they really wanted to, unless they start sitting people at the end of the game. Michael Thomas is the best receiver in the NFL right now, I'm going to say. He had 149 catches this year. Drew Brees seems to be clicking on all cylinders right now. Alvin Kamara has been doing great the past couple weeks. He finally got some touchdowns. And, Latavius Murray is even really strongly helping as a backup running back as well. He basically carried it when Alvin Kamara couldn't, and now that they're both there, it's dominant. They've showed it in the past 3 and 4 weeks, even going back to their loss against San Francisco when they put up 45 points. They put up 42 last week in a win against Carolina. They've just been dominant the past 4 weeks, and they're going to continue to be dominant this week against Minnesota in New Orleans. Unfortunately, after they win this game, they're going to have to go to Green Bay next week, which could be tougher for them being outdoors. But as for this game, I see them winning by 2 or 3 touchdowns.
So we can see this as a revenge game. And we can tell you right now, there will not be a walk-off touchdown for Stephon Diggs in this game. These are not the same two teams that they were a few years ago when they faced one another in the playoffs previously. That's not going to happen. We can just eliminate that possibility because Kirk Cousins is not the quarterback that Case Keenum was in that particular season. They had a stronger offensive line than what he has had this season. He has a great running game, though, because he's had Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook has gone down with injuries and been out a few weeks or whatever, but when he's been there, he's looked so good. And when he lost Thielen, he still had Diggs, and then for a while, everybody was out, and he still had Kyle Rudolph. This team has the pieces on their offense to really get it done. For some reason, that defense, though, on paper, this defense with, Anthony Barr, with Xavier Rhodes, with, Harrison Smith, this team should have been doing a hell of a lot better than finishing the season 10-6. Not that 10-6 is terrible, but there's no way that this team with that defense should have ended that way and should have had the games where they struggled the way that they did and having to lose by a field goal in some cases. This team is going to New Orleans, okay? They're getting ready to go and face the Saints. Saints have only lost 3 games all year. One of them was a complete surprise, was the Falcons game. Other than that, the other ones were a little bit tougher, but no games were they ever just completely out of the game, like I said, other than possibly that Falcons game. And every game that they were in, it was a fight. That defense is phenomenal. I love seeing what they've been able to do this year. They've been playing very cohesively. They've played very well together. Even when Drew Brees was out, this team was still rattling off wins because Teddy Bridgewater was able to come in and step up and do amazing things for this team. Taysom Hill, whenever you bring him in, whether you bring him in as quarterback, as a wide receiver, as a running back, this man can do it all. But then they got 2 great running backs. When Alvin Kamara struggled, Latavius Murray stepped up for them. He's got the top receiver in the league in Michael Thomas. It's going to be hard for any team to beat the New Orleans Saints this year in the playoffs. I promise you. And the team that will not get it done is not the Minnesota Vikings is not going to be the team to beat the Saints. It's not happening because of the struggles they've really had on that defense. And I don't feel like facing the Saints defense or the Vikings going to be able to score the way that they've been able to score against other opponents this season. So I'm definitely giving this one to the Saints. They're playing there at home. They play high level when they play at home. So absolutely, especially in the playoffs, I'm absolutely positively giving this one to the Saints.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the Saints' losses, as you said, with Atlanta, the only other 2 games they lost was that outstanding game, probably the best game of the year in any game against San Francisco. And then the only other game this year that they lost is the game where Drew Brees broke his thumb and they had to replace him with Teddy Bridgewater in the middle of the second quarter against the Rams.
Exactly. So we're not talking about coming in off these like blowout losses. Like I said, other than the Falcons game, which was a fluky one. They've been in every game. So yeah, I do not think the Vikings will be able to pull it off, especially there in New Orleans. And last up for the weekend, we got the 11-5 Seattle Seahawks headed to Philly to face the 9-7 Eagles. Dominick, who you got?
Yeah, this is like the BCS game that nobody wanted. This would be like Oklahoma against Oklahoma. I'm not even excited about this game as an Eagles fan. Luckily for the Eagles, the Seattle has been playing terrible the past couple weeks. They almost pulled it out. If they would have gotten a review for the pass interference, they could have pulled it out last week, which would have been, I would have loved, because then the Saints would have gotten a bye. But either way, Philadelphia, I know they've been lucky. They were lucky a couple years ago with the whole underdog thing. They're really going to need to do the underdog thing this year if they want to actually win a game with nobody on offense. We don't know if Zach Ertz is going to even be able to play play in this game with his lacerated kidney and his broken rib. We don't know if Miles Sanders is going to play in this game. It looks like he's going to, but he does have an ankle sprain. It looks like, J-Jaw is going to be maybe their top receiver. Maybe Greg Ward will be there as well and actually do something. Obviously, Alshon Jeffrey's not going to be there. We don't know about Nelson Aguilar if he's going to be there. We know Deshaun Jackson's not going to be there. Brandon Brooks probably is not going to play in this game, and we don't know about Lane Johnson. That's basically their entire offense that we have no clue about. Their offense is terrible. Good thing their defense is outstanding right now, with Homer Ty being there as the main back there in Seattle, with maybe Marshawn Lynch coming on goal line. But the wide receivers here, I think, are going to be able to get it done. DK Metcalf has been playing really good lately. Obviously, Tyler Lockett had a stretch there where he was playing terrible, where he came back last week and actually played good. Russell Wilson is still Russell Wilson. These two teams have already played, and Seattle came in and won the game, and I think they're going to be able to do it again this week. They're going to be able to come into Philadelphia and win another one.
The biggest accomplishment that I'm going to give Philly credit for is the fact that they won the NFC East division, and 2, they made sure that the Cowboys did not make the playoffs. So kudos, Eagles. I appreciate that, because I did not want to deal with the Cowboys being in the playoffs. So I'm very happy for you that you were able to get in the playoffs. Sadly, you are going to be one and done. You do not have any healthy players on your offense, short of your quarterback. Everybody else, if they play, which there's so many question marks on the ones that are even listed to play, that we're not even sure come game time who will or won't play, other than the people that are on IR. So I don't even know who's going to play for you, to be honest. So you're going to be facing the Seattle Seahawks team, who has a pretty good defense, who has a really good offense. They went through some struggling periods. That's why they're 11-5 instead of 13-3 or 14-2. But they've played close in the vast majority of their matchups this season. Do not think that the Eagles are going to find some magic way of winning. Yes, they won last week, but consider who the opponent was. So, and admittedly, they won with, secondary and third string and people off practice squad players and everything. And I found that amazing and phenomenal that they were able to do that, but it was the quality of the opponents. Seattle is not the opponents that the NFC East division opponents that they've had to face this year. Seattle is a damn good team. And Seattle has, like you said, Seattle has Russell Wilson. Seattle has Tyler Lockett. They have DK Metcalf. They brought back Marshawn Lynch, who was able to score last week. Admittedly, they lost their 2 top running backs, and that's fine. They still were able to bring in a running game that was able to play enough to keep them competitive, even though they ended up ultimately losing. Just don't feel, but consider who their opponent was last week. So that being said, I'm absolutely taking the Seahawks in this one. Don't see a way for Philly, with all those injuries, to be able to pull off some magic this week and get the win. They're one and done, but hey, at least they made the playoffs, and they can, hang their hat on that. Well, that's all our matchups. Let's talk about some of our fallout from on Black Monday, some of the firings and hirings and moves that have been made in the last several days. Let's start first with the Washington Redskins. So the Washington Redskins ended up firing their general manager, Bruce Allen, and it just came out recently that they fired their interim head coach, Bill Callahan. And in the meanwhile, they went ahead and hired Ron Rivera, who was let go by the Carolina Panthers, who we're also going to talk about. And it was just announced that they're also bringing in defensive coordinator Jack Del Rio. Dominic, I want your opinion on this. How much of an impact do you think Ron Rivera is going to be able to have there in Washington, considering the ownership of Dan Snyder?
Yeah, we'll have to see how Daniel Snyder does without Bruce Allen there. I think that actually the release of Bruce Allen, or the firing, thank God, and apparently he's not going to be anywhere in the team. It's not like he was reassigned and is still going to be in communication. It's the fact that his key doesn't work anymore. He's not going to be in the building. That's the biggest thing to take away here, and that's the best thing. Ron Rivera has a lot of respect from a lot of players, which is good as well. That's going to want players to come here again. We'll have to see if he gets in the ear of Daniel Snyder now that Bruce Allen isn't there. I think it's also great they brought in Jack Del Rio. He may not be a great head coach. He flamed out in Jacksonville and in Oakland, but he is a very good defensive coordinator, so that should help there, especially if they can get some players there. We know they got Landon Collins before this year. They have some players getting older, like Ryan Kerrigan and things like that, but if they have the number 2 pick here, they can get a very good player there in the draft. They can build up this defense to help with the offense. With that being said, giving him a 5-year contract is very good. Apparently, the way they got him there was he had dinner with Daniel Snyder and President Obama, and they were the ones that convinced him to come there, which is good to see that, he at least least Bruce Allen wasn't there, so they knew ahead of time he wasn't going to be there. He probably told Daniel Snyder at that dinner that if Bruce Allen's here, I'm not coming. And that's why they made the announcement basically simultaneously. But I really do like this move. We'll have to see if what Ron Rivera can do there, being that he is coming into Washington. They have such low expectations right now. I actually saw a tweet yesterday on Twitter that since 2000, Washington has 16 of 19 years, and since 2000, they've either been third or fourth in the NFC East. And I think maybe next year that might actually change, and they may be able to get up into possibly second. Hopefully they don't win it, but they could get up there in the second if Dallas takes another step back. And I think the Giants are still at least a year away.
I totally agree with everything you're saying. I actually am glad that they got rid of Bruce Allen. I feel like Bruce Allen was a yes man to Dan Snyder, and I feel like what it's going to take in order for that team to make some kind of a turnaround is for a strong head coach and for a strong general manager. Now, an example that was given by some sports analysts was the example of when Sean McDermott went to Buffalo and he brought Brian Beane with him to take over as the GM there. In other words, he knew he needed a strong GM with him. And look at what that team has been able to do in the time since they brought in Sean McDermott with having Beane there. So that being said, the fact that Ron Rivera is there, they're going to bring in, he's most likely going to have a hand in them, in whoever they bring in as their general manager. And if that's the case, and he gets a say, they're going to bring in a strong general manager that is going to be able to, if not tell Dan Snyder personnel decisions, at least get more of a stronger voice, not a yes man, someone that'll be able to say, no, we don't feel like you should draft somebody because they went to freaking college with your son. No, let's bring in somebody we feel would be a good fit for this team and in a position that we desperately need to fill. So I do feel like the hiring of Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio is a super good decision. I really hope that they bring in a strong GM that'll be able to tell Dan Snyder, you know, homie, we understand you own the team, but go have a seat somewhere. Just be a good owner, sign the checks, and let us run your team so your team can finally get on a winning track. I would love to see this team at least get, like you said, get in the second place there in that division. I'd like to see them possibly at some point be able to win the division again. They haven't been competitive or interesting in years. Like you said, you're talking about 13 out of 16, 9 times. And since 2000, this team has finished in last place 9 times. They've only won 1 playoff game in all the years since Dan Snyder has taken over ownership of this team. That's ridiculous. This team has not been a good team in forever, and they need some definite changes there. They need a strong GM that can stand up to Snyder, and I feel like this might have finally been the right move for this team. Let's see what happens there. I'd like to see some good things finally happen in Washington.
Yeah, and I mean, you know how bad it's gone there. I believe, I don't know when it ended. I think it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago. From 1967 until like 2 or 3 years ago, they sold out every single home game ever. And then now they're selling their tickets for like $5 just to get people in the stands so they don't have blackouts on local TV.
Exactly. And that was one of the pride things. I'm from Washington originally. That was one of the most proud things that they love to tell is this super long waiting list they had. And people were, giving their tickets. People would inherit tickets from dying relatives. And yet now, people are all but giving the tickets away to try and get people to go to the daggone games because they've just been terrible for so long. So yes, please let Ron Rivera come in there and have a say in who they bring in as general manager and let this team finally make some moves to go in a positive direction. I'm tired of seeing them be the laughing stock, not just of the NFC East, but of the NFL. Next up, let's talk about the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland Browns fired Freddie Kitchens after the final game of the season, and they agreed to part ways with general manager John Dorsey as of yesterday. In that time, they've asked to interview Patriots offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels, as well as 49ers defensive coordinator Robert Saleh, along with a slew of other people. Dominick, what is it going to take? Is it the Haslams? What is it going to take for the Browns to get back on a winning track? Does it have something to do with Baker? Is it something to do just with the Haslams? What does this team need to do to turn things around, and who do you think would be a good fit for them as far as a coach?
Yeah, they need a lot to turn this team around. Part of it is the Haslams. They're just a terrible ownership group. Both the ownership groups in Ohio are terrible, so it's tough for either of these teams to do anything. One thing they really need to do is put a muzzle on Baker Mayfield. I mean, I know he has this quote-unquote passion and leadership and stuff, which is fine when you're Tom Brady, when you're Aaron Rodgers, when you're Russell Wilson, although he's not really like that. But when you're at that level, sure, that's great. But when you're a barely above average quarterback, and that's being generous, you can't can't be the asshole that you are right now, and he needs to learn that. He needs to shut his mouth. Obviously, a lot of that came because Freddie Kitchens let him do it, because John Dorsey has no relative culture in his philosophy either, so he just let it happen. Neither of them cared. Neither of them put him in his place, and they needed to. Obviously, the locker room wasn't able to do it because they have people there like Odell Beckham, who has his own drama going on. Myles Garrett, who has his own drama going on. They didn't really have any leadership in the locker room either. And when Baker Mayfield is your leader, you have a big issue with that locker room. They need to bring somebody in there that's going to have respect. It would have been really good for them to get Ron Rivera there. Obviously, that's not going to happen. But they need to get somebody. They can't bring in I don't think they should go after Saleh from San Francisco or any of the other assistant coaches from San Francisco that they're looking at, the passing game coordinator, the running game coordinator, anybody like that. They need to bring in an experienced head coach, somebody who's going to get the respect of the rest of the room. And with that being said, the rest of the room can tell Baker to shut the hell up and listen to this guy because he knows what he's talking about. And have the respect for the new coach like he did with Lincoln Riley down in Oklahoma. They need to. I think Mike McCarthy would be a great hire here. I think they have already interviewed him a couple times. We'll see if anything like that happens. Matt Rule obviously already said he will not go there. He already refused the interview, which is tough when you're a college coach, even in like a Waco, Texas, and you're refusing to go to an NFL job. That just shows you how bad the job is. But I think Mike McCarthy would be a very good fit here.
I honestly agree with you on this point, too. They need somebody with head coaching experience. In particular, they need somebody with NFL head coaching experience. There are rumors out there that they are interested in interviewing Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer works in television, y'all. Urban Meyer briefly said that he would, if he were still coaching, he would have considered the Cowboys job. Everybody seems to keep missing the part where he said, if he were still coaching. He works in television. He gets paid a television contract, gets paid well. I don't necessarily see him coming back to coaching. Cleveland can give up all dreams and hopes that they have a shot. Like he even said, if he was even interested, it would be a Cowboys job. It definitely would not be the Cleveland Browns job. And part of that is the ownership. The Haslams are a terrible ownership. They're terrible owners. They just are. I'm sorry. They are terrible owners. I feel like they don't know what they're doing. The hiring of John Dorsey wasn't necessarily bad because Dorsey was doing fine in Kansas City, but that more has to do with Andy Reid than it really does anything that Dorsey necessarily did. So I don't know what it's going to take for them. I don't know. I do agree that Mike McCarthy might be the best possible candidate if they can convince him to take the job. And then they have to find themselves a strong GM that can be able to baby the Haslams and get them to understand to stop being so tight on their purse strings and also make better decisions as far as bringing in personnel. OBJ, it was a great addition, but you had to understand that he has a personality that may conflict with the very loud and boisterous personality of the quarterback, who's kind of has a little bit of an ego issue. So yeah, definitely need a strong head coach there. Mike McCarthy might be a good one. I'd like to see who they're going to try and bring in as general manager. I feel like, again, this is a situation with the Ron Rivera where if McCarthy comes in, they'll allow him to have some say in who they bring in or at least who they'll consider as general manager. And that might help them because it's going to take something in order to turn this Cleveland Browns team around. They were a complete disaster this season. Understand that they finished 6-10, but they need to have done better than what they did, considering all of the key and good pieces that they had there. Should not have finished that season the way that they did. And yet they did because it was personality conflicts and Freddie Kitchens letting them get away with too much nonsense there. So everybody had to go. I'm glad that both Dorsey and Kitchens are gone. Want to see who they bring in. Mike McCarthy might be a good one. Let's see whether or not they can pull them, rabbit out of their hat. But do not think they should bring in a college coach. I understand that they're trying to go after some, and I'm glad Matt Rule already turned that down. Don't feel like somebody that doesn't already have NFL head coaching experience would do well there in Cleveland. It'll be another disaster, and they'll be looking for another head coach again in 2 years.
One name to watch here, and although he doesn't have any NFL head coaching experience, he is a coach in the NFL right now, is Mike Stefanski, the offensive coordinator from Minnesota. They interviewed him last year, I believe twice, before they decided on Freddie Kitchens when Baker Mayfield went up to the owner's box and said, I want you to get Kitchens, and he said, okay. So before that, they were really set on hiring Stefanski, so he may be a name to watch going there as well.
That might be a good one. Let's see what happens with that. New York Giants went ahead and fired their head coach, Pat Shurmur. This wasn't necessarily surprised. That team has done so bad the last 2 seasons. Under Shurmur, I believe they finished 8-24 in those 2 years. So I understand why they did what they did and felt that they needed to make the moves that they made, even though he kind of walked into a kind of a messy situation as is. So I can't put that all on Shurmur, but he's the scapegoat and he's out of there now. Right now, they're considering Baylor head coach Matt Rule. They're also considering Josh McDaniels, Eric Bieniemy, Chris Richard. Dominick, tell me, what is it going to take for the Giants to be able to turn things around there? Who do you think would be a good head coaching candidate for them to bring in? And who could have some kind of impact with the Mara family, who could get in their ear and be able to give them some good advice on how to move forward, in particular with the situation with Eli?
Yeah, I think Matt Rule would be a very good fit here. He coached with them before, and the Mars absolutely, they love him from when he did coach there before. The issue with that is that Dave Gettleman has always had personnel control over whatever team he was with, and that's not going to fly, especially nowadays where coaches want to have more say. He doesn't want to have any special things given to him. He just wants to be able to have a say in his personnel. I believe it was when he was with interviewing with the Jets last year. He asked the general manager McCagnon, who was going to have personnel control. And I may be getting the story wrong. I heard it somewhere that it was either him or Gettleman. He said, who's going to have control over the personnel? And the GM said, that's why I make the big money. And he's, you see, I'm gone. And that's not the way you can be in this. Gettleman's going to have to concede some control from what I heard and what they've said on Charles Robinson reported from Yahoo that Gettleman has already said that he is willing to give up some of the control of personnel and everything if Matt Rule was willing to come in. Josh McDaniels, I know everybody talks about him going to every open job. I think he's like a coach in waiting there in New England, so it's going to take a lot to get him out of there. It's going to take probably like a John Gruden contract to get him to go anywhere. I don't know if you even really want him there because he may end up being there for 2 years, and then when Bill Belichick does retire, he'll just quit and go back to, the New England anyway, so I don't really know if you want to spend all that money just to get him there to have him leave in a year or two, which is what I think he'll do because I just think he really wants that New England job. So I would not hire Josh McDaniels as my coach for no matter what team it is. But I also like Richard, you were talking about from Dallas. I really like him because I do think that the offense of New York is actually, I think they're going to be very good if Daniel Jones can stop fumbling the ball and keep progressing the way he did throughout the year this year. They have Saquon Barkley there. They're one of the best in the league. They have Sterling Shepard, Golden Tate there, Slayton. They have a very good core on their offense. Their defense needs a lot of help, though. And with Richard being a defensive coordinator, I think he can really help that side of the ball. I think it's going to be Matt Rule most likely. But if not, I think they should go after Chris Richard from Dallas.
And Chris Richard wouldn't necessarily be a bad choice for them. He's been able to do a lot there, working with the defense and the offense as well. He's also worked as the passing game coordinator this particular season. So Richard would be a good addition. I don't necessarily know that the Giants want to bring in a coach that hasn't had head coaching experience. So I'm kind of iffy on them hiring someone like Richard or even Eric Bieniemy. I personally think Eric Bieniemy would be a phenomenal choice for them. Bieniemy is the OC over there in Kansas City, and look what he's been able to do with Patrick Mahomes there. So I really feel like Bieniemy would be an awesome choice for them. I know he's going to get a consideration. You have to keep in mind that the Fritz Pollard rule, where they have to, the Rooney rule makes all of these teams have to bring in, consider minority candidates. So you're going to hear Chris Richard and Eric Bieniemy's name in affiliation with pretty much all of these teams. That's just how it is. They're going to be all of these teams are going to consider them. The one that I personally have the most feeling for is Bieniemy, and I think that he would be a good choice there. However, like you said, I don't necessarily think that the Giants would make that consideration, in particular if they think that they have a chance of getting Matt Rule. And Matt Rule has not, unlike the Cleveland job where he was like, absolutely not. Don't even consider me for it. I'm not interested. He hasn't ruled out the Giants. So there is a possibility if Dave Gettleman is willing to hand over a little bit of responsibility to get him in there. And I feel like that would be the coach that they want the most of all the other candidates that are out there. Like you said, Rashard would be a good one. I feel Bieniemy would be a good one, but I really feel like at the end of the day, they're going to end up getting Matt Rule there if they can get Gettleman to come off of some of those personnel decisions this season so that they can move forward, because they're going to have to make some moves when it comes to the quarterback position. Dolphins, meanwhile, fired their offensive coordinator, Chad O'Shea, and they brought out of retirement somehow Chan Gailey there and hired him to be their new OC. Dominick, what kind of impact do you think Chan Gailey's going to have there? The Dolphins finished the season 4-12, 5-11. I want to say it's 4-12. Do you think that he'll be able to have an impact there? I know that they want to bring Ryan Fitzpatrick has expressed interest on coming back next season. Is there a possibility of that? And would someone like Chan Gailey be able to help with that team if they did decide to hang on to him and have him there?
Yeah, I don't really think the offensive coordinator has much to do with Miami's success next year. I do think that they will bring Ryan Fitzpatrick back, even if it is because they're probably going to draft, say, like a Tua Tagovailoa in the first round. They're probably at number 5. If they do that, then he's obviously not going to be able to play next year with his hip. He most likely won't be able to play. So I think they'll bring in Ryan Fitzpatrick for him to learn from. With that said, I think that would be a great thing for Chan Gailey to be in there with him. I know he was with Dallas. He was with Buffalo as head coach. But like I said, the offense coordinator, if they don't have an offensive line, which they don't now, if they traded Laramie Tunsil to Houston, nothing's going to fix this team next year, at least to go back into the playoffs or something. This is going to be another bad year for them where they probably go 5-11 again, or maybe 6-10 if they're lucky, maybe 7-9. But I think that Ryan Fitzpatrick is actually the key here, not really the coach in this case. Ryan Fitzpatrick gets these players excited to play with him. He was the leading rusher, although it was only with 248 yards this year on the team. At 38 years old, he loves the game. He's willing to go in there and play running back if you need him to. He'll probably play defensive line if you need him to. He just wants to play the game. He plays for fun. It's awesome to see. He's just a great character there. He's seemingly a great guy and everything. And obviously he needs to keep playing because, like Phillip Rivers, they're trying to repopulate the world. So, being that as it may, he's going to come in here, and I don't know how much influence Chan Gailey's going to have over, especially with Fitzpatrick. But I think that Chan Gailey could be a good thing for Tua if that's who they end up drafting in the first round for the following year.
And if they draft Tua, that might actually be a good thing for that team, that they do hang on to Fitzpatrick. Ryan Fitzpatrick, right before their final game of the season, said, absolutely, I want to be back next season. And he was able to do some things there in Miami this particular season, which no one expected him to do as well as he did. Now, I know that's saying something considering that, they didn't finish with the winning record. It's just that in the games when he did well, he did really well. In particular in that Patriots game, which kind of shocked everyone. I think that the addition of Chan Gailey as the OC will make some impact. Obviously, at the end of the day, Flores makes the final decision on things, but I do feel like he will have some say in some of the day-to-day things on that offense. Maybe he can convince them to, I don't know, maybe get a better running game, maybe pick up some offensive line players that he can coach up. Do think that having Chan Gailey there is going to make a big difference. I feel like he's part of what was missing this particular season, and it's going to have a big impact, and it's definitely going to help, in particular if they hang on to Ryan Fitzpatrick, which I really hope they do, because like you said, if they end up drafting someone like Tua who's not going to be able to play right away, they're going to need somebody there next season. And they have to understand that they're going to struggle again in hopes that Tua will be able to develop and play the following season and make more of an impact then. The Jacksonville Jaguars fired Tom Coughlin. This was not a surprise to anyone. That actually happened before the last game of the season. It was a necessary move on their part because of the conflict that he was having there with players. As far as what the team should do moving forward, Dominick, should they even consider filling that EVP of football operations position again? And do you think that the Tom Coughlin being out of there is going to have a positive impact on the team?
It can only have a positive impact on this team. He was just a terrible vice president. He was, he's a terrible executive. He was a good coach with New York, but he was a coach and he wanted to be a coach, but he wasn't anymore. And that was where the issue was he was trying to take over everything and he couldn't, telling players that he was finding them for being 5 minutes early to meetings instead of 10 minutes early and things like that. I mean, it got so bad the NFLPA actually sent memos to all the players saying, dude, when you become a free agent, I would rethink signing with, Jacksonville. That just shows if the NFLPA is telling you that, then it had to be done. I'm glad that, Shah Khan and Tony Khan did this. I don't think they're going to have an executive vice president. They did say that Tony Khan is going to have more of a role here with the football. I know he's been spending the last year and a half or so doing getting the Wrestling Federation off the ground. I think now that he's done that, he's going to be more back into focus into the main thing, which is the football. That being said, if they are going to have a quote unquote executive vice president, it'll basically be him, although he's more like the COO or whatever. But he'll take a majority of that role. I think it's great that I don't know about Caldwell, but that they brought back Marone. It wasn't his fault. This was all Coughlin for the past 2 years, making it as bad as it was. And I think now that he's out of there, Marone can show what he can do. And if he doesn't do it this year, kind of like Chip Kelly with the Eagles, we gave you the reign this year, you totally screwed the pooch, so you're out. And if that happens with Doug Marone, so be it, but they need to give him that opportunity to prove himself without Tom Coughlin looking over his shoulder and drooling on his leg and stuff.
1000% agree with you. Tom Coughlin, before the season started, people were talking about, hey, will Tom Coughlin, try and make moves to get Doug Marone out of there and convince the Khans to make him the head coach. Now, mind you, this was just rumors. There isn't any concrete evidence that at any point the Khans were ever considering Coughlin for the job. There isn't even concrete evidence that Coughlin was actually making moves. This is, again, just the rumor, the NFL rumor mill that there was, talk that Coughlin was trying to make that push. And now that Coughlin's gone and Marone doesn't have that threat over his shoulder that his job could be gone tomorrow, I really feel like he can have more of an impact there because he doesn't have to worry about that. Again, I don't feel like Caldwell is necessarily to blame any more than I feel like Marone is necessarily to blame for how the team did this season. The fact that Jalen Ramsey was pushing to get out of there this season. The fact that, Leonard Fournette was pissed off at one point because of the fine that Coughlin imposed upon him for sitting on the bench, for Christ's sake. I mean, come on, y'all. Are you serious? While he was injured. Are you serious right now? This was an absolute must-have made move, and I'm glad that the Jaguars chose to go ahead and make that move. I do feel like that it will have a positive impact on the team. Whether or not they'll replace that position, it's not a necessary position per se. Again, as you and I spoke off air, it only matters if your EVP is also your general manager in the case of like the Broncos and John Elway. If your EVP really isn't supposed to have more of a hands-on day-to-day handling of the team, then the fact that you choose not to fill it right away won't have that big of an impact on the team. So I don't think it's going to necessarily have a big of an impact if they choose not to fill that position right away, or if they just leave, like you said, Tony Khan in kind of a position of that until at some point later in the season, or maybe even next season, they choose to fill it, waiting to see what Caldwell and Marone are going to do there this coming season. So I look forward to seeing what Marone could do. Hopefully he can turn, get this team up and running again, get him back on all cylinders. And if he does, then, his position will be safe. Otherwise, he'll be on the list of Black Monday people that we'll be talking about next year. So obviously, if the Redskins hired Ron Rivera, that means that the Panthers fired Ron Rivera. They're in search of a head coach right now. They're another one of these teams that's considering Matt Rule. It's also been said that they are looking at Josh McDaniels, Greg Roman, Eric Bieniemy, Chris Richard, all the other candidates everybody else basically is looking at, they're looking at too. With the new ownership there in Carolina, and he's very new to running it, even though he did have a small ownership role in the Pittsburgh Steelers, he's now the full owner there in Carolina. Who do you think would be a good fit for the Panthers next season, Dominic?
Well, I think they are really going to go hard after Matt Rule. I don't think he's going to end up there. I just think that if he does take a job in the NFL, it's going to be with the New York Giants. It was actually great to hear him talk earlier. He said, I don't know what I'm going to do. All I know is after the game that he's going on a vacation with his wife, and then if there's still job openings after that, he'll interview, but he's not interviewing before he goes on vacation with his wife because, happy wife, happy life. So he was smart to say that and get it out there on public TV. But we don't know how David Tepper's going to be. Obviously, he was a whiz kid on Wall Street. Everybody knows that. He's made billions of dollars on Wall Street. So he knows what he can do. He knows how to market. He knows how to get what he wants. So he could throw a ton of money and other stuff at Matt Rule to get him there. They have that new facility coming right on the South Carolina-North Carolina border. That's supposed to be an amazing facility. He could show that to him. I actually think the best person for here, and I don't know if it'll happen because I don't think it'll be devastating to Baltimore, but I think that Greg Roman might be the best person to head there, only because what he's done with Lamar Jackson, basically Cam Newton is Lamar Jackson, just older. And I do believe that Cam Newton is going to be back next year. If he does come back, they're going to be able to use him just like they have Lamar Jackson this year. Cam could have another breakout year next year where he's back into the top 5 in quarterbacks as long as he's healthy. Where they have Christian McCaffrey there, who's amazing. Obviously, he's better than any running back. No disrespect to Mark Ingram, he's better than any running back Baltimore has. And they do have some great receivers there as well with DJ Moore. And if Curtis Samuel, everybody loved him this year, but he can do some stuff there as well. So they do have a solid offense there. They definitely need to work on the defense. But if they can get Greg Roman in there to work on this offense, I think that would be outstanding for them. And that would be a giant boon for them. And I think he might be the best person for them to go after.
Greg Roman is an absolute great candidate. And I think that would be a good addition for them. But again, I'm really putting my stamp out there. I know I put it out there every season on how badly I want to see him get a head coaching chance, and that's Eric Bieniemy. Again, this is the Chiefs offensive coordinator. Look at what he's been able to do with Patrick Mahomes and how well Patrick Mahomes has flourished under him. Again, you gave the example of Cam Newton. Imagine what Eric Bieniemy could do with an older, more experienced quarterback who already has Super Bowl experience. I can only begin to imagine what they could do with him. And whatever they decide, if they decide to draft a quarterback or not, they do have, they obviously have rookies there that I just don't feel like are going to work out, but that's neither here nor there. If they were able to still, have Cam there for let's say another couple years, and they had somebody there like Eric Bieniemy. Eric Bieniemy was there when Kareem Hunt was there. And despite what ended up happening with his time, with Kareem Hunt's time there in Kansas City, look what he was able to do when he did get over to Cleveland. It was under Bieniemy that Kareem Hunt was able to flourish. And it was under Eric Bieniemy that we saw Shady McCoy, have a resurgence. We saw Damian Williams really be able to step up. Tyreek Hill has done so well under him. We saw Mecole Hardman have a great year under Eric Bieniemy. This, I feel, if Eric Bieniemy doesn't get a shot this year, I'm seriously going to lose it. And I feel like Carolina would be the team that would be an absolute great fit there. I feel like being with David Tepper, if David Tepper would sit and listen to someone like Bieniemy, he could get so much good advice. He would end up drafting such good players. If he has DJ Moore there, and I feel like DJ Moore has a lot of the same qualities that you see, maybe not up to like a Tyreek Hill, but maybe up to like the level of, let's say, a Sammy Watkins, maybe up to the level of, Mecole, who's a little bit younger. I could see so much potential in this team under Bieniemy, and that's why I would love to see him get a shot there. So if I'm a petition for anybody, and you're going to hear me keep saying his name over and over again, I absolutely want him to get a shot this season. And I think that Carolina would be a good fit, and I think he would be great to be there with Cam. I think he would do great with Christian because I saw what he was able to do with Kareem, and I saw what he did with Damian Williams even this particular season. Yes, please hire. Greg Roman is a great one, but mine is definitely feel like Carolina Panthers would do even better if they hire Eric Bieniemy there.
My only issue with Bieniemy, and this is just playing devil's advocate, is that we saw, Matt LaFleur was, he went, he's the offense coordinator for the Rams. Let him go to Tennessee and be the offense coordinator there, and he didn't really do anything. Shanahan's coaches haven't really done anything. Zach Taylor did nothing with Cincinnati this year. Matt Nagy, the prodigy before Bieniemy, has done nothing with Chicago. And Bieniemy, if he leaves there, is he going to do the same thing as these coaches? The problem is that, yes, he's the offense coordinator there, but much like the offense coordinators with San Francisco or Los Angeles, it's McVay, it's Shanahan, it's Reed that are actually calling the plays. Reed calls all the plays in San Francisco, not Bieniemy. Yes, he's there on a day-to-day basis working with these players, but Andy Reid is the one that sets up this offense and calls all the plays. Sean McVay is the one that sets up the offense and calls all the plays. Kyle Shanahan is the one that sets up the offense and calls all the plays. So you have to wonder that, they even said that when Matt LaFleur went to Tennessee, we didn't know how he was going to work out, and he really didn't, even though it got him the head coaching job in Green Bay, because he never once called a play in Los Angeles when he was there. That was all Sean McVay doing it there, and that's the same thing that they're going to have to worry about with if he goes to Carolina is, yes, is he going to want to call the plays, or is he going to let his offense coordinator call the plays? And if he does, he's going to have to bring in a really good offense coordinator because he's never called plays. So we have to see what he actually is and how much of it was Andy Reid.
True, but you're forgetting one example of a coach that was under Andy Reid and really did flourish, and that's Doug Peterson. How quickly people forget that Doug Peterson was under Andy Reid, and under that coaching tree, he went to a Super Bowl and won. So I do feel like while that's a good example, I feel like that Eric Bieniemy is a little bit more of a Doug Peterson than he is a Matt LaFleur. So I feel like he actually would be able to get something done there when he gets the opportunity to head coach somewhere. And like I said, that's why I felt like Carolina, because they have an experienced quarterback who already has been to a Super Bowl, he would make more of an impact there than, say, in a team that doesn't already have an experienced quarterback or is getting ready to get rid of an older quarterback or have an older quarterback retire or whatever the case is going to be, like, for example, like the Giants or some team like that. So that's my thought on that.
I do agree with you. I think that if he does get a job, it needs to be with a team with a veteran quarterback like that. And, just like in politics, I had to give examples that, helped my situation and not hurt it.
Bingo. And that's all there is at the end of the day. So when it comes to coaching positions, the one that everybody's like really holding their breath on and waiting to see what happened is the Dallas Cowboys situation. Everyone is waiting for them to fire Jason Garrett. Cowboys have absolutely no reason whatsoever to fire Jason Garrett, considering that his contract is expiring January 13th. In other words, not this coming Monday, but the following Monday. His contract will expire and he can walk away scot-free and clear. They don't have to renew his contract, and they can start looking for a head coach. That being said, and that being what it looks like they're headed towards. Now, again, there's no confirmation. Jerry Jones and Jason Garrett and everyone there in Dallas are being very tight-lipped of exactly what's going to happen between now and January 13th, or even if that's what's going to happen on 13th. But let's play Fantasyland and give the scenario that come January 13th, Jason Garrett parts ways with the Cowboys. Dominick, who do you think would be a good coaching candidate for them to have come in there?
Well, as an Eagles fan, I hope they get, like Rich Kotite or something. But no, they're the best coaching. We talked about it off air. Probably the best one they could get, which would do great job there, is Chris Richard. That being said, that's not Jerry Jones' style. He wants the big splash play. He wants the Matt Rule, we keep bringing him up. He wants the Lincoln Riley, which I actually don't really think would work there, although that's probably who they're going to get. Or, the Urban Meyer, which I really think that Urban Meyer is putting that out there to get more money out of Fox to stay on TV. So I don't think Urban Meyer would actually do good in the NFL, period. In the NFL, you want a coach that's going to be there, and he seems to last somewhere for 3 or 4 years and then go somewhere else, whether it be for medical reasons or because he gets bored of winning or whatever it is. So with that being said, I don't think Urban Meyer would last very good in the NFL. I don't think he would be a good NFL coach. He's an outstanding and Hall of Fame college coach, but not in the NFL. I don't think Lincoln Riley would work out there unless he has an extremely, extremely good defensive staff, because we know that nobody in the Big 12 has ever played a lick of defense. And, as for Matt Rule, I do like him. I think he would be somebody there that would be able to stand up to Jerry Jones, but also take a backseat to him in a sense where he's going to stand up for himself. He's not going to be just a puppet like Jason Garrett is. He's going to have a backbone, but he's also going to be able to work well with all the players. He's going to be a player-friendly coach there, which would be awesome. One thing that we talked about earlier, which I had heard, a couple of little things that it may not happen, and it probably won't because he's under contract till next year, is that Dallas may want to go after Mike Zimmer from Minnesota. And we know that Minnesota does not want to lose Mike Stefanski, their offensive coordinator. They've already said that. He's also a hot name. So they may let Zimmer out of his contracts if he wants to go take the job in Dallas, and then Minnesota would promote Stefanski from offensive coordinator to head coach. And obviously that's total speculation, but I could see that happening if they want to go after Zimmer. But other than that, I think it's definitely going to be one of these college coaches, whether it be Lincoln Riley or because they can pay him. He's making $6.5 million right now at Oklahoma. Dallas will pay him $8 or $9 million a year to come there. And they know that he knows that they're going to give him at least 6 or 7 years there. So he's going to have some stability there because they're very, patient with their people, even though they want to win. Matt Rule, I think he should stay in Baylor personally. I just really like him in Baylor. I hope he does stay there. I hope he's successful there for a long time and creates an institution there. But I think their best choice would be Chris Richard, but I don't think it's going to happen.
As much as I would love to see them promote Chris Richard, that's not the splashy hire. And if you know anything about your boy Jerry Jones, is always he's going to go after a splashy big name. The reason he hired Jason Garrett is because he kind of, in that case, wanted a yes man. But I absolutely expect him to go for the splashy hire. So who would be the splashy hire for him to bring in? Obviously, Urban Meyer would be one, or Lincoln Riley would be the other one. Like you said, Urban Meyer is working in television now. Does he want to go back to coaching? If he does want to go back to coaching, does he want to coach at the NFL level? Not every college coach has success in the NFL. Yes, you have the example of someone like, say, Pete Carroll, but for every Pete Carroll that we have a Steve Spurrier. We have a Nick Saban. We have people that did well on the college level but went to the pro level and didn't do a damn thing. So it doesn't always work out coaching on the pro level like it does in the college level. You're not dealing with just kids anymore. You're dealing with pros, people that are adults, people that have adult problems and things of that nature that are a little bit different than handling college kids. So does Urban Meyer or even Lincoln Riley want to take on those type of issues and those types of problems and dealing with an owner like Jerry Jones? Ugh. I don't necessarily know. I definitely don't I personally don't see Urban Meyer leaving his position in Fox Sports. It's hard to leave television behind. Not saying that people haven't done it. Obviously, we saw what happened in Dallas. You saw Jason Witten come back to football. So it does happen. I'm not saying that it doesn't, but I don't see Urban Meyer doing that. In the interview that everyone keeps referencing, they asked him about Lincoln Riley. He said he didn't know Lincoln Riley. He couldn't speak for Lincoln Riley, but the Cowboys position is one that any head coach would have to consider. And then the next question was, well, if you were still coaching, would you consider the position? And he said yes. In other words, the key part that everyone seems to keep missing is the fact that he said if he was still coaching. Meaning he didn't necessarily say he was interested now that he no longer is coaching. He's an analyst. He likes what he does. He likes talking about football. He doesn't necessarily want to be out there on the sidelines again, especially dealing with a team like the Cowboys and dealing with an owner like Jerry Jones. Would Lincoln Riley take it on? Yeah, probably, maybe. They have the money to be able to pay him, like you say, give him $9 million a year. I just don't see that it lasting maybe more than a couple of years. He would have a great relationship with Dak Prescott because he is a quarterback's coach and he's done so well with the previous 2 quarterbacks that he's had there. And so I could absolutely see him doing well with a Dak Prescott and being able to, really coach him up and really have him doing great there. Not that he isn't doing well, but have him doing even better. So yes, absolutely Lincoln Riley would be a good choice for them. I just don't feel like any college coach is the best decision, in particular because they got to deal with an owner like Jerry Jones. It would make more sense for him to hang on to Chris Richard. I don't necessarily see that happening. I know that, it's not the flashy pick that everybody would want. So we'll see what ends up happening there. it's a possibility. Again, he hasn't let Jason Garrett go. It is a possibility, though slight and probably not realistic, that Garrett ends up staying there. I doubt that that's what's going to happen. Most likely he is going to move forward, and we'll see what ends up happening there. This is the one coaching position that I have the most questions about, because I'm just not 100% sure who Jerry Jones is going to be able to convince to come there. I know that the names of the people that he wants the most, but convincing either one of them that they should leave better, not necessarily better, but positions where they aren't under the same level of stress is going to be hard for him to do. So we'll see what happens there. I'm that's one where I just don't know for sure who's going to come there.
Maybe your boy will end up there.
Hey, that's a possibility. One other topic I really wanted to talk about was, wow, how do we even broach this? Phillip Rivers, in his final interview at the end of the season with the Chargers, kind of made it clear that something was getting ready to happen, whether that is that the team has indicated that they're going to move on from him, or whether he's considering retiring because he's been there so many years and the team hasn't gone to a Super Bowl. I don't know what's going to happen with Phillip Rivers, whether or not he will be in the NFL next season. And the other one, while we're talking about it, is Eli Manning. Eli Manning is still interested in still playing. He's expressed that, but he said he absolutely, positively will not be a backup anymore. And he believes that his time there with the Giants is over, period. He's like, I'm not doing this backup. I'm not being Danny Don's backup, period. I'm just not doing the backup shit anymore. And I feel like Phillip Rivers has the same feeling as well. He doesn't want to be somebody's, be there and be a backup, to whatever rookie they bring in, or, a second year quarterback or something of that nature for them. So, Dominick, what do you think should happen? Should both of these guys go ahead and call it a wrap and walk away? They're the same age. They were drafted same year. Should both of them go ahead and give it up and retire? Or do you think that they should try and find a team interested in them starting, maybe for a couple of years until they get someone trained up? Or should they try and stay where they are? Like, what do you think should happen? What do you think that both Phillip Rivers and Eli Manning should do this offseason?
Well, I think they should go back to what they were supposed to do when they got drafted, and Eli should go to Los Angeles, and Phillip should go to New York, and they should just take each other's places. But no, it's seriously, I think Eli is done. I think he should retire. I know he wants to play another year or two, but I think that we saw when he did play that he's just not capable anymore. At least Phillip Rivers is still a starting quarterback. Yes, he had 20 interceptions this year, but we have seen years in the past where he's had a lot of interceptions. He's still an extremely accurate quarterback, even with those interceptions. I think he still has the fire to play and the ability to play. I can see a couple things happening with him, either staying in Los Angeles, which would be tough. I don't think the Chargers should stay in Los Angeles. I think they should try and go back to San Diego and use that $500 million. They should use that $560 million they paid to go to Los Angeles to build a new damn stadium for themselves in San Diego and stop getting the city to pay for it. But that's another story. But that being said, he's either going to stay there, I think, or he could possibly go to Indianapolis to take over for at least for next year for Jacoby Brissett, which I know would be tough because they have him for $20 million next year in Jacoby Brissett. But he could go there and take over for him. Or another one that I actually heard the other day on Around the NFL, which actually does make a lot of sense, is we know he loves older quarterbacks. We know he loves quarterbacks, period, but especially older ones with, Rich Gannon, and everything. Rob Johnson, is if he goes to Oakland and replaces Derek Carr for a couple years and tries to get something going with Josh Jacobs there, Hunter Renfrow obviously he loves the tight end. They have Darren Waller there with Phillip Rivers. The defense could be better. If they might even be able to get like a Isaiah Simmons or somebody there as a linebacker. If they get somebody good like that on defense and really build that defense up, he could stay in division and go to Oakland and end up there. But again, that's all Phillip Rivers. I do think that Eli honestly should retire because I don't think he's going to get even a guaranteed starting job or a guarantee that he's going to be able to compete for a starting job anywhere in the league, unless seriously he would go to if Phillip Rivers does leave and he does end up somehow going to the Chargers, then he could probably be guaranteed a starting job unless they draft like a Justin Herbert or something this year. But other than that, I don't really think he has a job at a chance at a starting job, where I think Phillip Rivers still would, and I think he could possibly go to maybe Oakland or something.
I 100% agree with you. I just feel Eli has nothing left to prove. Dude, you won 2 Super Bowls. You know, maybe you think that you can play another year or 2 years and get another one, you know, and that way at least you don't have to retire with the exact same number of Super Bowls as your brother. It doesn't matter. Okay, just go ahead, wrap it up, call it a career. You've done your part. You won Super Bowls. You know, what else do you need? Like, there's nothing else. I understand that the passion and the desire never tends to go away for players, but at some point your body just can't do what it used to do. You're not the same level of player that you once were, and he isn't the same quarterback that he once was. Even when Danny Dimes was struggling at points during the season, they still stuck with Danny Dimes. Not that they didn't bring in Eli for a couple of games, but that was really only when Danny was hurt, not when Danny was struggling. Danny struggled, and they weren't going back to Eli. That says something there, that they are ready to go ahead and move on and from Eli. And I understand Eli wants to have a starting job somewhere, but there really isn't a team that's willing to take on a 38-year-old quarterback that has gotten demoted at the team that they play for now. So I don't know that I'm trying to think. I'm even sitting here running through all the teams that I can think of, and I can't think of a single team that would have a use for him at 38 years old after being demoted to backup and bring him in and have him be their starting quarterback. There isn't a team I can think of right now that would have a use for someone that maybe has a mediocre to poor season next year, if they could even get in and start, if they could even beat out a rookie quarterback or like a third or fourth year quarterback. I don't see it. So I'm hoping that Eli just go ahead and retire. Maybe this offseason, Peyton will sit him down and be like, dude, come on now. I understand you want to have one extra Super Bowl over me. Let it go. You're 38. Come on, just go ahead and retire. We can do some more direct TV commercials together next season. It'll be good. You'll have fun. You get to spend more time with your kids. You'll enjoy it. Phillip Rivers does, on the other hand, same age, you know, because remember, these two were drafted at in the same year. Phillip Rivers, I maybe does have a couple years left in him. At least has maybe one, possibly as many as two left in him, and he could take over a starting quarterback position in hopes that he could coach up a rookie quarterback somewhere. So like you said, maybe he could go there to Indianapolis. Indianapolis really doesn't like what they've seen out of Jacoby Brissett, so it's most likely that they are going to draft a quarterback this offseason or try and bring in a veteran quarterback for a couple of seasons or whatever, and maybe still draft a quarterback. In the case, like a good example of that would be like the Denver Broncos. Denver Broncos brought Joe Flacco over in hopes or thinking that, okay, well, we'll have Flacco here while we get this kid Drew Lock ready, you know, if we're Lock to play in maybe a season or 2 seasons. And, come to find out, Joe Flacco is Joe Flacco. And they should have brought him there. There was a reason he got, benched last year in Baltimore. And there's a reason he got benched here. We won't get into some of the controversy there on that at all. But let's just say he got benched because he was quote unquote hurt. And then they saw that he just wasn't up to playing at the level he was, and Drew wasn't as raw once he wasn't injured to play at a certain level. So that being said, I really feel like Phillip Rivers could go somewhere and have that kind of what people wanted out of Joe Flacco. Phillip Rivers actually can do. And so I could see him going somewhere, like you said. Maybe he goes to Indianapolis and fills in for Jacoby Brissett, and they can move on and draft someone this offseason that they can have coached up, and Phillip Rivers can work with them, or he can end up going, like you said, maybe Oakland is a good one where they can work with, maybe he can work with Derek Carr. Good Lord, does Derek Carr need some help? They just paid this kid $100 million something freaking dollars. He is not showing that he is worth that kind of money. Now, I don't expect them to get rid of him because obviously Gruden likes him, but that would be, at least it would be smart for them to, hey, we're going to bring in a veteran quarterback that's done it, that's, been in playoff games, that can play at a very high level to kind of help work with you and maybe help to develop your passing skills a little bit better so you can, develop a better connection with some of your receivers this season. And maybe that he stays there for a season, maybe 2 seasons or whatever. So those are two good places, like you said, that would be good for him to consider, or good for him to go. So let's see what's going to happen with either one of them. But of the two, only Phillip Rivers can I see maybe possibly ending up somewhere for another season or two if he doesn't consider retiring as well. But I know he wants to play, but I know Eli does as well. I just feel like Eli should go ahead and Eli has nothing left to prove. Eli isn't going to, I don't think he's going to go into any more playoff games. He's already won 2 Super Bowls. Call it a career, dude. It's over.
Yeah, Eli has nothing left to prove, and he also has nothing left in the gas tank. At least, if Phillip Rivers gets to Vegas, that's a very family-friendly town, and we know that that's going to be good for him.
Him and all 97 of his kids. Well, you guys, that's all the time we have. As things come down the pipe, we will definitely be ready to roll on with some more fallout from the season. I see that there's going to be a lot of coaching changes coming in the next few weeks, and we'll be prepared, and we will keep you guys informed. In the meantime, be sure you follow me on Twitter at TheNFLGirl320. Dominick, where can they follow you?
You can follow me at EnvisionFF.
You can read more of my thoughts on SheKnowsProFootball.com. Dominick, where can they read your work?
You can read my work at FantasyHotRead.com, as well as Rotoballer.com and Razzball.com.
That's all the time we have, you guys. See you back here next week.